Shall we start from the beginning? If walls could talk, what would these walls say?
If it wasn't for the Boys Club, honestly, I would be a totally different person today.
School got out at Dana, and right away we came here.
We had some of the most competitive basketball leagues you've ever seen.
It was kind of my home away from home, and I learned to play sports here, team sports.
To this day, I still can remember some of the plays that my coaches taught me.
I've seen it really change lives and save people's lives, and the Boys and Girls Club saved my life.
That was it. That was our life, Boys Club.
For 75 years, beginning with the Boys Club of San Pedro, the present Boys and Girls Clubs of the Los Angeles Harbor has played a pivotal role in the development of generations of youth in the community of San Pedro and Wilmington. Each child that passes through these doors passes through a legacy that is paved with great people, such as professionals like Willie Knowles, Misty Copeland, Alan Ashby, and Bobby Gross. Every child that entered these doors will be given the opportunity to dream big, smile, laugh, and find a lifelong friend, build a better future. They will have the opportunity to be great. The year was 1937, and the country was a very different place than it is today. You could buy a house for $3,900. 10 cents would buy a gallon of gasoline. And the country was in the 8th year of the Great Depression. Seems like an unlikely time to start anything, but this is where our journey begins. San Pedro was like any other town in those days. We had our share of boys hanging out around downtown, getting into mischief, and making the life hard for store merchants. So the idea came up to give these boys a safe place where they could have fun and stay out of trouble. A 30-member hiking group called the Civitans, led by Los Angeles Councilman John S. Gibson, decided to take the task of starting the San Pedro Boys Club.
Pete Bentavoya, original member of the old San Pedro Boys Club, which was on 5th, just above Gaffey. I believe it was shaped like a Quonset hut and probably could hold a couple hundred people in there. Really, all the young kids at that time had somewhere to go, so we all met there at the old boys club.
At the time that I was raised, my dad, who happened to be a longshoreman, really didn't have time for the family. They were too busy making a living. So we matriculated to the Boys Club.
San Pedro's always been a melting pot. It's always been a conglomeration of a lot of ethnic groups, both American ethnic groups and Eastern European. And coming to the Boys Club, we had all of those mixed in together. We didn't really see any difference. We kind of got along with everybody.
In 1940, the old San Pedro High School was a partially condemned building, a seemingly unlikely place for a flourishing group of boys to be housed. The property had a large gymnasium, room for pool tables, a wood shop, and easy access to Daniels Field for football. The move was made possible through the support of the National Guard, who made a formal appeal to the school board to allow the club to operate on the site. Initially, the Van Camp and Lipman families purchased the land for $25,000 and allowed the club to operate on the property. A few years later, after the local number 9, the Shipyard Union, bought the property from the Van Camp and Litmans and deeded it over to the Boys Club. Finally, the club had a place it could truly call its own.
The date was September 1st, 1947. Several pre-teenage boys were standing at the doorway, to greet their new executive director. Light bulbs were smashed and scattered about the floor. As I entered the games room, several windows to my office were shattered. Ink was splattered about the walls, and billiard balls along with cue sticks were strewn about in many different directions. This was my introduction to the position of executive director of the San Pedro Boys Club. Destinies have a strange way of unraveling. I had become meshed into a challenge that mirrored itself in the image of boys with all their dilemmas.
In 1947, Nick Trainey took over as the executive director. He began a career that would make him a legendary figure in the club's history. Nick was a true San Pedran who loved the community and really wanted to make a difference.
Hello, my name is Dennis Trainey. I'm Nick Trainey's son, past executive director of the San Pedro Boys Club. Earliest memories, for the most part, of coming to work with my dad, which was even at that age a big privilege and obviously exciting because it was just like a gigantic playground for me.
I was here at 9 in the morning when Nick opened up. He closed at noon, he'd go home for lunch, I'd go home for lunch, come back, and I'm sitting on the steps waiting for open up after he came back from lunch every day. And so I spent some formative years here, and you had to know the man to appreciate what I'm saying. He was a tremendous mentor.
The person who helped me most was Nick Trainey. He was like my second father. He encouraged me. He always talked to other kids and used me as an example of someone he trusted. So he gave me honor, and I loved him like a father.
During this time, the club offered many activities. But out of all of the activities at the club, sports took center stage.
Well, Nick Trainey kind of took me under his wings and allowed me to use the gym to practice basketball by myself. And then I got on the teams and I was allowed to travel and go to different places to play against different boys and girls clubs, meet new people, and most of the time I was the only African American in the mix, but my teammates were always with me. We were from Pedro, as they called us.
For me, the field out there behind the boys club, Midtown Little League, was legendary. I remember a lot about the Midtown Little League, and at that era, we had some great athletes in San Pedro, Cabrillo Bay, Southern League, Hilltop. Gary Maddox was one. Jerry Garcia, who went on to coach at San Pedro. So Midtown put out some great players, a couple major league players. For me, the two things I'll always remember is just sitting in the bleachers, waiting for my game to start on a Saturday, just anxious, ready to play. And then when my game was over, got to walk a half a block down to Pilatos and get an Italian ice. So my life was great, and the boys club did its wonders for me. Being raised by a single parent, I was here most of the time. And under Nick's guidance and Ray's guidance, that was a time of my life.
You're born and raised in Pedro, you don't get out of town much, and so through sports, going to play in other teams in other cities, that was quite an experience for me.
We were undefeated. We won 13. We went 13-0 one year and 13-0 the following year. So I really loved my football season because I was a young kid, and that's the first time I'd worked so hard and accomplished so much. San Pedro Boys Club was a heck of a football program. They also kept an eye on us during the week. Living down in the project wasn't a happy experience, but associating with the football players and the Joe Espositos and the Ray Martinezes were inspirational in my life.
The guidance that like Ray and Emilio Chavez gave to us and Mr. Trainey made us men at an early age.
Mitch Vladimir was an inspiration to a lot of boys. He took the guys that were a little bit of troublemakers and stuff, and he made them get along,
The club was certainly a great place for boys during the 1940s and 50s, but there was a major problem when the club entered the 1960s.
Yeah, well, I can remember the old gym, and I remember basically it was falling apart.
gym itself was a nice older gym, but the floor was in need of repair. The baskets, the rafters, it was kind of a dilapidated, rundown facility.
Nick, the board, and the community knew the building was falling apart, so they banded together to start a campaign to build a new, modern San Pedro Boys Club.
The old club was getting torn down and the new club was being built. I was maybe 9 or 10 years old at the time, but the club had already been a big thing in my life. So when they tore down the old club, I went and got a piece of it and brought it home. And I had that for many, many years.
Mr. Trainey selected me Boy of the Year in 1963 when they tore it down. And it was like Boy of the Year of 1964, and I helped raise funds to build this building.
The year was 1964, and the country was in a period of social and political instability. This did not seem like a very good time to start a capital campaign for a new building, but this is precisely what happened. The people of San Pedro pulled together and in under 2 years raised over $400,000, $3 million by today's standard. The people of San Pedro have always been great supporters of the club and its mission. Even when times were tough, the community was always there, starting with the shipyard and the longshoremen's unions. Pietro Di Carlo, Canisters, Monsignor Scott, Judge Walter Benz, Tom Papadakis, Gilbert and Ruth Van Camp, the San Pedro News pilot, Ante Perkoff, Julian Hernandez, and scores of others represent a long legacy of club supporters.
My first experience at fundraising for community needs was through the Boys and Girls Club. I've tried to make that a big portion of my adult life too.
One of the stories that I heard through that was when the Lions Club was involved, there's actually a room in the San Pedro Boys and Girls Club that is named after the Lions. It's called the Lions Den. And one of the reasons that is the case is that the Lions helped to raise the money to build that room as part of the $300,000 or $400,000 project it was to create this new Boys and Girls Club after the old one was condemned.
And after a little over a year of construction, a community's dream became a reality. The new Boys Club of San Pedro opened its doors to an anxious group of boys in November of 1965. The organization had been in existence for 28 years, and the U.S. was vastly different than when it began. Now, with $13,000, you could buy a home, and 31 cents was the price for a gallon of gas. The Watts riot had just occurred, and there was unrest in many parts of the country. Again, it did not seem like a very opportune time to open a new facility. Yet that was the way of the club.
I got to come into that club, and I remember walking into that gym and how great it smelled after it was built. That was huge for the community.
When we came into the new gym, it was like walking into, I'm going to relate it to the sports arena, the Forum, but walking into this big brand new gym with the shiny floors and everything's brand spanking new, and everybody just so excited. Not only did we have the new facility, new gym, but we had sponsors that were, I can remember the Modern Printers and so many different local, sponsors from town. And now we had our own uniforms, so we were like professionals now. What was really fun here was that when you had a beef with somebody, they threw the boxing gloves on and you jumped in the ring and just beat on each other.
They'd throw you in that ring with these 24-ounce gloves that you could barely pick up when you're 12, 13 years old, and you had to fight. you know, and no fight ever lasted more than a round.
But it ended up with a smile on your face afterward.
It was mostly slapping, you know, with the big old gloves.
That experience definitely helped me later on in my life, and then, I tried doing the same with my own kids, so.
The new gym launched a new era of basketball and athletics at the club. The new club spawned a sense of community that will last for generations to come.
Watching my son play biddy basketball here in the program they had with Ray Martinez as director, they had a very competitive biddy basketball program.
I think it was 66, got to go to Peoria, Illinois, represent San Pedro in the biddy basketball program.
My father was my coach, Bill Stevens, and he coached many teams here in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And Chuck Trinati, a big influence in my life and still a mentor to me to this day.
17 years I was coaching here at the Boys Club with my brother and a gentleman named Bill Stevens. We were one of the first ones to go back east.
We had tremendous young men that became tremendous people. They won California several years, and we went to Chester, Pennsylvania, and Peoria, Illinois with them, and another year we went back to Chester, Pennsylvania with them.
We had a great team and we took third in the nation. The club gave me an opportunity to compete at the highest level and really taught me the value of working hard. Had some great mentors at the club.
There's so many of these guys that dedicated their coaching experience and their playing experience to us.
The camaraderie we had a great coaching staff. George Padavin and Don Gregory, he's passed away, a great guy. Mike Carmelich, Bill Stevens, Vince Flamingo, and we just had a bunch of great guys. Loved the Boys Club. They came down, volunteered. Everybody volunteered, and actually did a really great job coaching. I think it was a lot of fun. Some of these kids will never forget us.
During his 21 years as executive director, Nick Trainey helped the club to realize its place in the San Pedro community. The club was a place where boys could be themselves, learn lifelong skills, and build lasting friendships. In 1968, Nick decided it was time to retire and pass the torch to Ray Martinez.
I first met Ray Martinez as a Boys Club member playing sports. I mean, that's what Ray did. He was our athletic director. Later on, Ray was the executive director, taking over for Nick when I was teaching and coaching locally.
Ray carried on the club's tradition of great athletics. Biddy basketball continued to flourish, and teams were able to travel the country in all-star fashion. The Midtown and Hilltop Little Leagues were still going strong and still supported by the local businesses. With Ray, the club did not skip a beat. In the late 1970s, the world was changing rapidly. The average price for a house had tripled in the 10 years to $55,000. 63 cents was the price of a gallon of gas, and the Dow Jones Industrial Index was a whopping 805. During this time, great financial strain was gripping the nation as well as the club. In 1978, the club had to make the tough decision to give up its baseball field. The land was developed and leased to the Safeway Corporation. As difficult as that decision was, it was a necessary decision for the club to continue to operate. Another necessary change for the club happened in 1991.
Ray asked me to do him another big favor, and what was that, Ray? And he says, this evening at the board meeting, you need to convince the rest of the board that we need to become the Boys and Girls Club of San Pedro. It wasn't an easy thing, but after that board meeting, we became officially the San Pedro Boys and Girls Club.
This was the first time that girls were officially allowed to join the club.
Finally accepting girls in officially. I mean, we always snuck girls in the back door back in the day, but officially letting them be members in the early 90s, and becoming a Boys and Girls Club was a huge milestone.
When the Boys Club decided to change their name to the Boys and Girls Club of San Pedro, I felt included as a female. Membership at the Boys and Girls Club has truly transformed my life. To be in a position where I could truly give back to my community, the same community that has given to me, has made me a better person and put me in a position that I couldn't have dreamed of being in.
In 1994, it was Ray's turn to pass the torch, and he passed it to Mike Lansing. Mike was born and raised in San Pedro. Like Ray, Mike was a member of the club. He knew the history, and it was a natural fit.
Mike Lansing was an excellent choice for the executive position of the Boys and Girls Club. He was not only a coach, he was very active in that, serving the youth throughout the community. So what he's done for the club is beyond words.
As we are nearing the completion of our 8th decade of serving our harbor area youth, it is safe to say that as our local population and demand for our programs and services has grown, so too has our organization. We have adapted continually to meet the present and future needs of our membership. But at the same time, we have stayed true to the original mission and spirit of the club. A club that is enhanced by the many new things we do while staying true to the successful things of the past. As I walk through the gym and see the very same floor on which I played basketball nearly 50 years ago, it is easy to hear the echoes of the past as well as the call of the future. The lessons of sportsmanship and good character we learned in the gym are now being enhanced with academic enrichment in our learning centers and through our most successful college-bound program. The lessons of fair play and getting along with others that I learned by playing pool and snooker in the games room are now being enhanced with creative expression in our arts programs. The club has evolved to meet the changing needs of its members, but at the same time has stayed true to its original mission.
It's true, my father was a member of the club when he was a young man, and ultimately rose to the ranks to become the program director and then the executive director. And now, looking back after 75 years of its existence, the club is doing exactly what it should be doing, what it was intended to be doing in this community, and that is being a resource for young people in San Pedro and any place else really in the harbor area, to provide opportunity for them, to provide a place for them to be themselves, to come to a place where they're going to be loved, to come to a place where they can have opportunity, where they can dream, where they can build upon some of the things that they want to do for their own future.
Hi, my name is Misty Copeland, and I am a soloist with the American Ballet Theater. I just want to say happy 75th to the San Pedro Boys and Girls Club, my home, where I got my start. I'm so proud and honored to have been a part of the history of the San Pedro Boys and Girls Club. So, happy 75th.
Yeah. Yo, what's up? This is LeBron James from Akron, Ohio. Play for the Miami Heat. And I want to say congratulations, 75th anniversary to this Boys and Girls Club, man. To you guys. You guys are unbelievable. And let's do another 75 years to get to 150.
Hey, it's Mark Wahlberg here. I just want to wish you guys a happy 75th anniversary. Many more to come. God bless and keep up the good work.